slide down one or two. Yep.
So then we can all be on this side. Oh my gosh, you guys.
All right, Bill.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if I could interrupt the board meeting just for a moment before it starts. On behalf of the whole administrative team and really all of the faculty and staff, I want to thank the Board of Education and you individually and collectively for all the work you do for the community. Obviously, we all think education is probably the most important work someone could do with their life, but we all get paid for it and you all volunteer to make it work. And we feel blessed to have all of you. So really on behalf of the entire faculty, staff, and really the community too, I'm sure, shares the sentiment that they appreciate people who look after the school to look after their children. Thank you. And we also, as part of the process of rebranding Candor, Go Coyotes, we have shirts for you to wear to help us promote our new identity, to help us, we're really asking you to advertise for it, but we hope that you enjoyed the shirts and that you're as proud of being a board member for Candor as we are for having you all as our board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. First order of business, and we will talk about them after, I assume, but accepting the CPSC and CSD reports.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Nate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Greg. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, we have the minutes of our regular meeting, September 21st. Are there any editorial changes, questions, comments, concerns on those? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve them? So moved. Thanks, Hope and Kate, for taking care of it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I will abstain. I was not here for the meeting.
Fair enough.
And we have enough votes to pass it.
Next, we are accepting reports, treasurer's report. Is there a motion to accept treasurer's monthly report? Aye. Thank you, thanks, Ray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And next up, the appropriation transfers. Is there a motion to approve the consent? In a second? Thanks, Brett. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Next up, we have the warrants. So first, general fund 9.
Bus insurance, is that an annual? So what we see here is an annual premium?
I'm assuming, so I'll ask Chris to check that, I'm assuming.
I would think if it's like most vehicle insurance, it's just annual.
But I don't know if they're billing it biannually or annually, so we can check that.
Okay, it's not a big deal, I just,
No, it's a good question.
I had the same question in advance about the cameras, the 24/7, and I found out that was for the whole year, so that means you pay, but.
Yeah, that is, for the cameras on page 10 is for the whole year.
And moving on, federal fund, number 3. So were these all the new instruments, all the woodwind
Yeah,
and brasswind, or?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So our instruments had gotten to the point that most of them were several years old. And we were paying repair bills regularly, more than annual, and probably more than we should. And this was a year, really, it kind of feels like it might have been our last opportunity to really hit the reset button. So we did invest a lot this year in our music department with instruments, some that need to be replaced, some that could be repaired. And now we're working with the music department, both at the elementary and high school, to get on a schedule. Different instruments have different lifespans. I know piano's good for about 70, 75 years, but a lot of our instruments are not, and they need to be either repaired regularly or replaced more often. Not any different than at home with an old car. Eventually it gets more expensive to maintain it than a car payment.
I remember talking, I think we all remember that from the budget, so this
Right,
is
we talked
actually,
about
sort of-
that.
they
Now
were
you see it.
arriving,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm assuming there's more to come.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not all of it. Yeah, it's an investment this year.
Yeah.
But we're part of the music department, we want that opportunity.
School lunch fund, number 3. Very short.
we should see.
Nobody ate in September. And then capital fund number 3. And with all 4 of them reviewed, is there a motion to approve them?
Mhm.
Thanks, Ray. Is there a second? Second. Thanks, Hope. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Recognition of visitors.
Okay, so Jessica, representative for the Candor PTSA. So we also want to thank the boards. We brought a basket, so there's a thank you note and a goodie for each of you. I want the basket back.
Noted.
So kind of a recap of what we've been up to. We're still in the midst of our membership drive. We attended both of the open houses. We were also set up at the homecoming football game. While we were there, we handed out kind of this spirit wear, or not wear, but there's like pom-poms and noodles. And so we've invested in those things. We've been using those at the indoor games this fall too. I didn't realize that other schools had these things, but ours didn't, I guess, a whole lot of. So I guess it's been a real hit in the student section that they really enjoyed having those, and it's been a lot of fun. So we did that. We also helped decorate the homecoming dance that was put on by student council, but we just helped them decorate. We also decorated the elementary school for Spirit Week. If you saw pictures of your kids with a cool backdrop, we supplied that and some decorations in the entryway there. That was fun. We're nearing the end of our cake roll fundraiser. So if you want a cake roll, order it from your favorite elementary school student. We'll be wrapping those sales up. And Eva Collier here and the counselor for the 5th through 8th grade started a career speaker series the second Tuesday afternoon of each month. So we're partnering with her to bring in a speaker and provide some goodies in the auditorium. We only had one so far, but that's something we're starting to do monthly. So we're excited to partner with her on that. Upcoming, we have Trunk or Treat on October 31st. So bring your kiddos. Should be a lot of fun here in the elementary parking lot. That day is also Doug's Fish Fry, so don't cook that day. They're here 11 to 6 right out front. And then just, I guess, ongoing, you have the sporting events and the theme nights, and then we will get busy in December. We'll also be throwing parties in the elementary school for the CAPO fundraiser. So we kind of, to reward the kids for selling, that they get to choose a pizza or an ice cream party. So we'll be doing this.
You make me tired.
Yeah, right. The Tuesday afternoon speaker series, so that's during the school day or after, or?
So it's at 2:30, which is after the high school day. So that it's aimed mostly at the high school, but this past one, the 6th grade class actually came. It was part of their school day. They walked over and listened as well.
Thanks. Neil?
Oh, Neil Farley, I'm just representing the faculty. I don't have anything to say. Just listening.
It's okay. It's allowed.
Making sure we keep the place neat.
Ourselves in his face, yeah. Well, thanks for making the time. Consider, and you have another chance at the end, just in case, yeah. We don't have any considerations, so we're on to the consent agenda. So we are going to table 10.2 G2. I'll pull it from the agenda, however you wanna.
10.2.
This from the stuff from tonight.
Today, yeah, today's version.
Oh. This one?
Yes. And just,
So with that business done, are there any other items on the consent agenda that should be pulled out for separate consideration?
I've got a question on, G1. Okay, well, I'm looking for the asterisk, but see now.
It's up top, this
Yeah.
is pending a finger supported criminal history background check.
Okay, got it, thank you.
We are losing a maintenance worker to retirement.
yeah, and with regret, I can say that.
Very nice.
We're gonna replace or?
Yeah, we'll replace, we'll need to add, fill that position. I don't know that we'll be able to fill that position, so people may shift.
Yeah.
But yes.
So this wasn't a surprise.
No, it wasn't a surprise, he let us know, it's, again, with regret, but I'm happy for him too, he seems happy.
37.
Yeah, 37 years, long time.
That's incredible.
Still comes to work every day, very positive.
I've never seen him without a smile.
Yeah.
No, he was always, even as a kid, he was a friend of my oldest son. So. I remember him as a child. Just a nice kid. Now he's retiring, what does that say? Gail was coming back, I
Yeah.
see, part-time.
Yeah,
We talked to her at the Powder Puff football game, and she's 2 more years,
she's told me that. Movie.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
But she always comes back wherever we need her.
Yeah.
And bus driver mechanic, is that a new?
It is, so, well, yes and no, we had drivers who were mechanics.
Right.
Who would agree to cover if something happened. We don't have someone, and we need someone, just in case Rob, he doesn't. Our bus driver mechanic that's regularly working as the mechanic,
Right.
it's also a driver. Rob rarely takes time off, but we now don't have a backup.
Okay.
The person who was backing him up is no longer with us. The person actually retired, so now we're filling it.
And just on the fire safety reports, it looks like anything they found was closed the same day, so was it just quick fixes and
Yeah,
they re-audited?
They pointed out.
Now, that was a question I had too. We had a resignation for assistant track coach and then reappointed that same person as the track coach.
Yeah, one for
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly.
Move center stage. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Please, Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda as amended, however, we need to word such things, yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So no Wayne, but we have his report. I'll try to go in order. Last time I went out of order. Pete, you're up.
All right, so the first piece I've included that I already did, it is on the back of that sheet. We do see similar progress that we have historically in both reading and math. We do see a little bit of a bump in math. I attribute to that bump a little bit into we have more consistent math intervention the past 2 years. And it's every other day as opposed to when it was when we could do it. So it's more consistent this year and last year. So I attribute that little bump to that, and I also attribute it to an addition of our AIS staff member. We added our AIS teacher a couple of years ago. So hopefully we're starting to see an upward trend of those math scores there. If you look at the ELA, historically, we're right about where we are as well, where we typically are. And these scores kind of lead into the standards mastery, that second piece that I wrote in there. As we looked at these scores, as we looked at intervention practices, we had talked about 3rd through 6th grade using additional supplemental resources to our side-by-side curriculum, standards-based resources and assessments. And the resources are in terms of lesson plans that come through iReady that address standards-based, they're standards aligned. And our hope is that it gives our teachers a little bit additional of a tool, another tool to use during intervention time to set intervention groupings. Because initially our intervention groupings are based on our diagnostic, and that's 3 times a year. But once we start using our standards mastery, we can then be more poignant about moving kids around as appropriate as it based on their need. So Sarah is taking the ELA committee through that work right now, and we've committed in 3rd through 6th grade to do the standards mastery work in every ELA class. And that's something that the teachers decided to do because we felt like the side-by-side curriculum that we currently have needed just an additional supplement to it. And we have iReady as a tool. We decided to use iReady as a tool. And our hope is that we start seeing some increase in our ELA for our diagnostic. That's really going to be the gauge as to, if the standards mastery is working, along with our report card data, along with formative and summative assessments. So we're excited about that tool. It's a lot of work to get that standards mastery consistent amongst the grade levels, but the ELA committee is committed to supporting the grade levels with that. And Sarah's doing a great job leading that committee. I did add the three priorities, I guess you would call them, standard that the ELA committee will be looking at to support this work. The third piece on my report is literacy committee initiatives. So probably both in Wendy Brood and Messel. The literacy committee is separate from the ELA committee. So literacy committee pushes the love of reading basically throughout our building with initiatives that I put down here. Next week, we are going to start the Jack-o'-lantern books. And I want to give a shout out to Huizinga Farmstead, who donated roughly 30 pumpkins for us to do our Jack-o'-lantern books. So I picked them up this evening, and I'll be bringing them into school for kids to start that project next week. Those are really great initiatives. Kids love doing them. Every student, the reading buddy piece, every class has a reading buddy. So once a month, they go to that reading buddy class. They read with the kids. We try pairing the older kids up with the younger kids. And it seems to be a big hit with the kids. So I'm glad every grade level has a buddy, so to speak. The band and chorus numbers there, that's pretty impressive when you see those numbers and growth from last year. Taylor Masters and Louis Ingles are doing a phenomenal job with that program. Those numbers are incredible for a small school like us. Those music rooms are packed every single morning because they do it before school. They ride the high school bus in, and the teachers work tirelessly to support those kids with that program. We have our holiday concert coming up in December, and the kids are really excited about participating in those programs. So those are great numbers for a school our size.
And the new instruments probably help.
Yes, exactly. And I have to say, our music teachers do a phenomenal job in trying to fix those instruments as best they can themselves before we send them out. And it's really a process. Every instrument's different, and our teachers do a really great job with that. So kudos to them. The last piece, Nurse Esther is visiting classrooms. I talked with Nurse Esther to get her into the classrooms this year, and she's really excited to do that with the topics that I've listed there. She started the healthy brushing habit. So if you have a second or third grader, they came home with a pouch with free toothpaste, toothbrush, and activity sheets. She went into the classroom, talked about healthy brushing habits. The pre-K and K kids are doing the hand hygiene as they need it, learning how to wash their hands. They have the glow gel that they do, and they turn the lights off to see what spots they missed on their hands. So that's really neat for them to experience. And then, yeah,
Please. You want to do a K6? Yeah.
all the way up. Yeah, they're kind of
K-12.
Yeah, K-12.
And then 4th through 6th grade, she's doing general nutrition education for those kids.
Just a comment. The trending is good.
About the data, you mean?
Yeah,
I read
yeah,
it.
the reading and the math trends are going the right way. We seem to be level setting initially when we start a year, but that's because we've got one class aging out essentially and a new class coming in. So we go back to that level, but I think that's the driving force.
It is. And that first diagnostic is always a challenge for the kids because a lot of that content is like a third grader taking the third grade diagnostic. They haven't seen that content yet. So, that's attributed to the first test scores being so low too.
But obviously our remedial work is working. I mean, it's positive. So we just have to keep doing that. And hope we'll get some kids coming into those grades that are reading at college level to boost things up.
That's our hope, right? And Brent reminds me all the time, this takes time. Right? I want that initial result of, okay, we got a new math curriculum, we got a new ELA curriculum. Let's start seeing more progress than we are, but
these are encouraging.
They are, absolutely. Our teachers are working really hard to get these scores where they're at.
You brought up intervention, it prompted a question. So I know last year you had kind of like an all hands on deck to have as many intervention groups to make them as small as possible. Is that still the?
Yeah, we have special areas like PE, art, music. They're all pitching in during intervention. Our AIS teachers for reading and math, classroom teachers, special ed teachers, all hands on deck for intervention.
And you're able to do that, whoever has intervention, K through 6 or 1 through 6 or whatever.
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, so you're able to locate those extra bodies to create extra groups at all grade levels for intervention?
Yeah, our goal and our master schedule makes it a little bit challenging with
Right.
special area teachers. So when there's special area teachers available, they are assigned to a classroom and it's consistent support. So they take a group of kids to make the teachers group a little bit smaller, or the special ed group a little bit smaller, or the math teachers group a little bit smaller. So they certainly support intervention.
Pete, for the students that are at that 2 years below level, is there an intentional focus on trying to get them enrolled in summer academy to cut back on those learning losses during the summer?
Yeah,
Is-
so
Is Sarah really reaching out specifically to those families to actively encourage them to engage?
yeah, that's a great question. So it's not just Sarah's, our teachers that are reaching out to the parents and recommending it, strongly recommending it. Obviously, we're not gonna say, you're not moving to third grade if you don't come, but they are very active in that.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
So then we have college report. And then Matt.
So, things in the tech world are still just chugging right along. The ticketing system is working well, helping me to keep track of things. The big news this month is the appointment of looking for a network specialist. So Mike has been in the district, and I meant to look it up to see how long, but he's been in the district for a very long time. I don't think 37 years, but it's I think it's 20 something years.
He was here when I graduated, and that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, so he has led the district technology and shepherded it for that time and has done a great job. And a year ago, we started talking about, what we're gonna do to find a replacement for him. And when Brent and I talked about it, it made sense to look at leveraging the support of CNERIC, because we could use their expertise in finding people and the ability to get aid back on a shared position. And it seemed like that was going to work out great. They created a position in January, or started looking in January of last year, and they had one viable candidate in the spring that we interviewed and it was not a good fit. And since then, that was the only candidate they had. So Mike, in August, Mike and I sat down and he's like, I'd really like to be done sooner rather than later. He's like, but I'm not gonna leave you hanging. I really wanna make sure that you guys are on solid ground with a new person. But I'd like to be done sooner rather than later. So I started really pushing the RIC to think about other avenues, what other ways that we could make this work. They've been using a lot of different services to try and find people, and they're finding a hard time finding people just in general themselves. So I think that trying to look locally makes the most sense, to try and find somebody around here because the CNERIC position was going to be a shared position with us and another district or Syracuse. So somebody could have had to drive to Syracuse a couple days a week and then drive here. So it was challenging to begin with, but so I think trying to find a network specialist, and I picked network specialists as opposed to a network administrator, so that we could try and find someone that had requisite skills and that could learn. When I met with representatives of CNERIC, they said we have a lot of resources, training programs that we can, support a specialist that is ready to learn, to build them into that position. What we're going to do in that transition, I've got some ideas, but it's sort of falling on me to pick up some more of that, which is challenging. It's a lot on my plate, but more concerning is that it's just me being the only one with the keys to the kingdom in some ways. So that's a little concerning. So we're really looking to find somebody, and we have some ideas of some people. So hopefully we can find someone relatively soon, so that they can have about a month or so with Mike to really spend some time and learn our system. So I appreciate your support in helping us, look for a position, or look for a candidate to fill that spot. It's gonna be some big shoes to fill, and we know that whoever comes in is not going to be able to, just jump right in and fill the shoes. But hopefully with his support and what I've learned from Mike, we can make that transition as seamless as possible. So I talked to Mike, and he still is okay if it takes a little bit longer, but I think he's still ready to be done, which of course he should be. And I really appreciate everything that he's done and his willingness to be patient with us. And he still does coming in 3 days a week. That works really well for him. Nice long weekends work well for him.
He's really gone above and beyond
Yes.
to stay with us. I mean, when we hired him part-time, his wife had passed recently, so he, that was a good thing for us to do, but it kept things constant.
Mhm.
And now that he's ready to finally retire, we can't begrudge him, although
Yeah. Oh, no.
replacing him is gonna be a chore.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, you need broader shoulders.
Yeah, a few more days in the week. The other piece was that when we did have members, 4 people from St. Rick come down, all tech people, to look at all of our data closets and look at how things were set up. They had nothing but praise for Mike. They looked around, and if any of you are interested to walk around, I'm happy to show you around. The closets from the last building project have been maintained really well. You walk in and they're pretty to look at if you're in the tech world. When they walked in and looked at them, they had horror stories of wires everywhere and mismatched cables and just like spaghetti wires. So our closets look great, and the way that Mike's configured things, I think, as I've said in the past, keep us very, very secure with fairly low overhead. So he's done a great job. So, and before I move on, other questions about that?
Matt,
You know anybody that?
when do you anticipate having a job description that we could be sharing out with potential folks?
Today.
Okay.
We got it in our tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it just came tonight, but.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah.
No, that's why I went back and
Yeah.
looked at it.
Yeah, so it's a civil service position, Tioga County, and if people have, I think the experience is, obviously, education is great, but if they have experience, we're happy to work with them to see, what they can do. So if you know anybody that is looking for a new job, we have a great place to work.
And you are focusing it locally this time rather than going through, because I think that drive is just a deal killer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm still working with City Rec, because I think the value of even just a shared person that's a network administrator a few days a week. I talked to a couple other tech people in the area, in our TST region, and things are in flux. People are leaving other districts, and so they may need somebody, and we can advertise it through CineRic as a local joint position. So that would make sense too for someone with the qualifications. So.
Being it's civil service, is the test already completed or created, or is that something that we're waiting for the county to do so the test can be?
I think that they would have to create it eventually. Yeah.
So we're looking at a little bit of a waiting game, so we're probably talking about hiring somebody who will work in this capacity until they can test, and then if they don't make the test cut, is that what I'm?
I guess my understanding was that we would hire them
Yeah,
until they
we
took
would
the
hire
test.
them, and then they'd have to take, just what you said.
Is it a temporary session?
Right,
And then if
you
it's
can
the
hire.
top 3, we're okay. If we don't.
Right, but actually, my guess is if they just pass, we'd have to have 3 candidates for them to have,
Right.
we'd have to have 4 candidates for them to have to score in the top 3. That's not likely, so all they really need to do is pass the test, which I'm.
If we can get 3 candidates, I'll hire all 3 of them. I'm trying to hire all 3 of them, but I'll hire 2 of them at least.
sometimes you get multiple people who test, and the one who won it didn't test in the top
Right.
5 or 3, and now all of a sudden you've got to get down that list to get to that person. Now,
For this position, they don't have a list of people. That's why I'm saying it, that's not going to be an issue here.
Yeah,
Right, and there haven't been people looking for that position.
Right.
You know, other jobs, they have a list of people who've already taken the test. If it was an office worker, clerical, that's a different story, but this one thing.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Just out of curiosity, when we do civil service, is that through our county, or
Yeah.
is that through our GST BOCES county?
TST,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, Tioga
TST.
County. Tioga County,
Okay.
yep.
right, so it would have been different, again, it's a good question when we were up with Citywork, it would have been their county.
Yes.
They did advertise here though, because they serve the rec services all the way down to the southern tier.
Right.
So when they were looking to get us to
They
share,
advertised it.
they were looking to
Corporate.
share with other, you know, other schools in this area that they also service, but they still find somebody. We're just gonna be more attractive, that's why we'll get that fixed.
Thanks.
No problem. And this is not, we're not alone in this, boat. An email went around to all of the tech directors in the central New York region. Somebody's like, oh, if anybody has, an applicant that they didn't hire for a network specialist, could you send them our way? And then 6 or 7 other people, and I've got my vote in there too, but there were 6 or 7 other districts in the area that were also looking, so, in the region. So it's just job market is challenging. It's time of year, or not time of year, but these days. And then finally, I just want to thank Pete for building some time into the schedule to support technology, typing specifically, a skill that we know students are going to need when they're doing their online tests and just moving into upper grades in the middle and high school. So doing that every Friday. And then that program also has some digital citizenship lessons that we'll put in throughout the year as well to mix things up. But the students seem to love it. I look at the dashboard and there's students that are doing it on Saturdays and Sundays on their own, which is great. So it's a fun program and they seem to like it. We just were trying to keep them on the home row. So
I heard that from my 3rd grader, pointed out the home row.
yeah.
Sorry?
You weren't using.
No. No, I definitely use home row. Thanks, Matt. We're up to Kim.
So the first item, I did not just add it because I knew Neil was going to be here. But I did have the opportunity to sit in with the School Library Systems Council regional meeting, I guess last week, the week before. I think there are 3 more meetings throughout the year. They were looking for an administrative member. Nobody else offered, no. I'm really glad I said opportunity because a couple of things. First, I learned that council is regulated by the commissioner's regulations. So I thought that was really interesting. That not all of the committees and councils that we have in the school are, that one happens to be. And just seeing, we think about the library, we're sitting here right now, but how much support the librarians provide to our whole educational program, pre-K-6 or pre-K-12. And just being able to see the other librarians and hear the conversation. Emily Wemmer, the director of regional support at TST, is also sitting there. So just to have a broader view, because Neil and I talked a little bit about it after the meeting. They can have their conversation there, but without having that other perspective, whether it's an administrative level or a principal's viewpoint, they can have great ideas, but they also need somebody at the table to help say, yeah, I can see that working, or maybe not. But anyway, thank you, Neil. I really did appreciate being able to go. So I wanted to share and the connection and the work that when teachers need resources, the Neils and the Wendy's of the world are the people that the teachers go to. Library systems. The next item on my report is just an update. Last year, the multi-tiered system of support was probably our major initiative last year throughout the district. The elementary has had a response to intervention program for years. 7-12, we've been trying, and last year we made a real intentional effort. And with, I'll say some of the help from the Reading League, some of the support last year from the Mid-State Regional Partnership, we're moving in a good direction where we're really trying to find tools, use tools that can identify the needs that our students have. Right now it's focused on reading, but also writing and math. But fine tuning, and really being able to look and say, okay, we have iReady scores. So kindergarten through 8th grade, we've used iReady, the 3 diagnostics throughout the year. Now we have this oral reading fluency 1-minute screener that we can use. Like, we can identify the first round, set the threshold, who didn't meet or who did get into the group that we have to look at. Now we have the oral reading fluency screener to even further identify, okay, which kids really are struggling with fluency. And yesterday, I met with Aaron Thomas, Mark Burrell. Wayne was at another meeting, otherwise he would have also been there, but moving the work forward using the screeners in the 7-12 building. Erin's already used, I think she's used the screener with any students that are classified. Mark was brought into the conversation because he's the teacher who supports that tier 3, 7-12 or 9-12 over here. So how can we continue to help support kids and identify, uncover, really find, if there's a need, a deficit that maybe has been hidden a little bit because they have really strong background knowledge or vocabulary, but their reading fluency might be an area of need. So that's just a kind of an update on what we've been doing. The third item tomorrow, Angela Herrera, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, I'll find out. 12 hours or so. She and another associate of hers will be here to present session 2 and 3 to our staff. So pre-K through 12, all instructional staff plus full-time teacher aides. And the morning session, as it states there, the basics, phonological awareness, and then the afternoon is phonic knowledge. Not expecting high school teachers to have to teach, or special area teachers to have reading groups, but having that deep understanding. I've already seen evidence of it. I think we all have. Just having the knowledge, being able to be part of a conversation and understanding when I say, or any of us say, oral reading fluency. What's that simple view of reading? How does it work together with comprehension? And all of our faculty having that understanding is going to be really powerful. So that's exciting. And then the last time on the first page, we did have 2 reviewers from OSC, so the Office of the State Comptroller. It was not an audit, it was a review, and in italics is what they were actually looking at, assessing the state education department's oversight of preschool special education. So that was their whole focus. And they were here, I think, till noon, and we had everything ready for them when they got here. They had to review 7 student files from 2019-20, and all went well. And then they asked if, the other part of the interview is best practices, because they also want to find out and uncover what are some districts doing. And I did mention in my report, even a school our size, having a single point person as a CPSE chair, and for us that's Sarah Loomis, that's huge for our families, families that either have children in early intervention and then making that transition to preschool special education, or didn't have early intervention, but now they're needing support for their children. it's a new game, they don't understand, to have someone, and she's not fully dedicated to just CPSE, but I think that makes a big difference, helping families navigate the system and know what to do and when and how and all the connections, so. And then the last part on the second page, I will continue to keep the district priorities listed. First and foremost, because if I don't, I think Chris Pierce will, I'll have a dunning if I don't. But it is a good reminder every month, just what were the initiatives that we identified last year, that we did start that work around creating SMART goals, and we don't want to lose that momentum. So just keeping, whenever we can squeeze it into an admin meeting, come back to it and say, okay, can we pick up and where we left off and keep moving forward? So those will stay as reminders.
Thanks.
Yes.
And Chris's report, which did include some very helpful information about potential tax exemptions for us to review. So she's not here, but please pass along our thanks. And then we have Mr. Williams' report, dutifully submitted. And then Brett.
Thank you. So I started with 3 draft policies that I'm asking the board to consider. The first one is on athletic mergers, and I did run these by the attorneys both at the School Boards Association, who specialize in policy, and also Erie One BOCES. Everybody in the state, every district uses Erie One BOCES. They specialize in that and have attorneys that are policy attorneys to help with this. They looked at the sports merger, and I was kind of proud because they said it was very interesting and seemed good, and I understood why we might want one. No, they'd never seen it before though, because other districts, that even when they merge sports, haven't written a policy like that. So they didn't find any real objections to it. They just didn't have a model for us to compare it to. So that one I passed on to the district's attorneys who do approve or review our policies before I'd ask the board to adopt it. The other one was on transportation, and again, both the School Boards Association attorneys and Area 1 BOCES attorneys, again, which are both free services for our district, said that one was fine. It really is the policy that you've already had in place with just a minor adjustment so that we wouldn't be using the federal guidelines for meals reimbursement, which goes up and down and changes every month, is difficult and would be a set amount that is reasonable. And that way the policy will match what's been done over the past few years and what's in the contract. And then the third one is a field trip policy, and the board members who have been here will remember a few years ago, actually the year I arrived, our board policy manual had become so big that it was actually cumbersome because every year policies are added and responds appropriately to new state regulations or regulations changing. But if you don't clean out, sometimes you end up with policies that actually contradict each other and it gets unwieldy. So at that point, the board adopted a policy manual that was every policy that was required at that time by New York State Ed Department, everything we needed to have, and a few that you really felt we should have, but nothing else. It was a cleaned up model. There isn't a requirement for a field trip policy, but I do know most districts have them. And although I wrote the draft before the tragedy happened, what happened with the Farmingdale field trip is a good example of why we need one. That board did have a policy, and I'm sure they thought they did. It was a bus accident, and it was a field trip that was going out of state. And, again, those type of things kind of wake you up. And the other reason I think a field trip policy would be appropriate for us at this time, as we want to continue to offer experiences outside the school for classes, and we also plan to do more collaboration with our neighboring districts, like Spencer Van Etten with our shared ag program, or students from their program that come to our technology classes. If we're going to send students on a field trip, it would be prudent to have a policy that the other district can refer to. And so the rules for the students and families would be similar, at least clear to students from both districts. So that's why I'm bringing it up. They're still in draft form. I'll bring it to the board again, probably next month for a first reading, and then a following month, or maybe 1 month more before we have to act on it. There's no real urgency for any of these. I just, again, wanted to present them to the board. Any questions about what's there?
How should we get your feedback?
Yeah, so any board, either collectively or individually, could give me feedback or, about what's in there or not. I can tell you, like I said, the attorneys gave me some good advice. The one that they had the most suggested changes to was the field trip. They said what I originally drafted was a combination of regulations, which are regulations, you don't need a policy if there's already a state regulation, but I had put them in my original draft. And then some of it that was very procedural, which they suggested, boy, it's a good idea to have a written procedure so that teachers or anybody who's taking students on a field trip know what the school's going to expect, but that's not really a board policy. And then the policy itself that's modeled after the draft they gave me, I think it's still a long policy. There's a lot to it when you take students off campus, particularly if you take them out of state or out of country, which I know out of country we rarely do. But like a lot of things, it's good to have the policy before someone does come to it. Okay. The second recommendation that I want to bring up to the board now, which would require board action, a motion that be approved at a subsequent board meeting, is to change the start time of our board meetings. I'm going to suggest or ask that we consider starting in January, moving our board meeting start time up by 30 minutes and starting at 6:30. And that will give us time, when necessary, to have longer executive sessions after. And again, what we talk about in executive sessions is very regulated, but the big one for me is personnel items. I've asked all of the administrators, and not just the principals, but anybody who has direct supervision over any new employee or untenured employee, to be prepared twice a year. And I think the best times would be January and then again in May, but we could talk about that more. To just let the board know their initial and then second and third and fourth impressions of new employees. So when it comes time to grant someone tenure, it's not someone that the board is, or any board member would feel less than very familiar with. You know why you are recommending tenure, because that's a big ask of board members to grant tenure, which gives a lot of guarantees to someone that you haven't worked with directly. So that's the big reason. But again, that would start in January, and of course we'd advertise it on our website and let people know, because we won't want anybody to miss or be late for a board meeting who wanted to attend. That's why they're open to the public. I know Chris put it in the report, and I also did, to talk a little bit about a couple of exemptions that we've been asked to consider, or the board's been asked to consider. One is tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. And another one is the senior citizens age exemption, which is based on income. And both of those, I know Chris put in the report some information on them, and we're happy to get you any more information you'd like. There's no real rush for this board action either. January or February would be plenty of time for next year's budget and next year's tax collection. Once we bring those to your attention, I just want to follow up a little bit on what Mrs. Nichols said about the superintendent's conference day and the reading league. I'm really very excited about it. I know Mr. Raymond's not here, so I'll put words in his mouth. He can't contradict him. He talked about it too. He's been reading for years about schools and even high schools that have made a dramatic jump in their students' proficiency and achievement level. And in almost every one, it's been around literacy. And when we had our first introduction of the Reading League with the faculty and staff, we did, Kim put out a survey to get feedback from the teachers. It was overwhelmingly positive, and I'm happy about that. And I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture. One concern, I wouldn't even characterize it as a concern. One comment that came up a few times, I don't know who they came from because we kept it anonymous, but I'm imagining it was probably more secondary teachers who said, yeah, it was great, it was interesting, but doesn't really apply directly to me. And maybe they were looking for something that they can more immediately put into their classroom, which I respect. But I also agree with what Kim said about having that deep understanding of literacy will help every teacher. So we are continuing with it. Should I go into my analogy? I think it's a lot like, the podiatrist who wants to just focus on feet and the muscle structure and the bone structure and feels that, well, maybe neurology is a little too far removed, but it's not, because the nervous system affects everything. And if you have someone that's experiencing foot pain and you don't have a solid understanding of the basic human system, you could miss some things. Again, not as immediate, not as close to what your practice is, but very important. I think it's very similar. Reading is thinking, writing is thinking, it's how we communicate, and it's how we teach. So having that deep understanding is going to help across the board. So we're continuing with that. Tomorrow is a big day for sessions 2 and 3. And then there is a 4 and 5 that will both be half days. And those are their early release days. You might have seen that we already have advertised on our website, Thursday the 9th and November, and then December 21st, which will give an early release just before we go on to Christmas break. And
then we follow up with the March conference.
yeah, the March conference, be well prepared. Any questions?
We are ready for board comments. Any board comments?
So I know we already touched on it in the consent agenda, but I do just want to say once again, for the record, just a huge thank you to Harry for his years of service to the district. I've known Harry since I was 4 years old, being, the child of a teacher in the district. Harry was so good to all of our students, kindness and dedication to his work. And he will be very much missed by our district. So thank you, Harry, for your service.
Well said.
He looks the same.
Yeah.
I don't know what he drinks, but I do.
I know, we need the secret.
You and I had talked about the PA system
Okay.
in the stadium for the flag football game. It was horrid. And I talked to you and you got a workaround for the homecoming game.
And when you say it was Matt, Holly, and,
Wasn't me.
no, it wasn't me. I talked to people about it, and then I went out and heard what they were testing, and it was good. It was good. Thank you.
Now, was
Nobody did anything.
I was,
Magic.
sound systems are not my.
They're not Gary.
Well, I know, it was Gary Holmes
Gary
was
Holmes.
part of it, and I thought you were there too. I know Mike went out
We
and made
were.
sure it wasn't
Matt and I did it.
electronic. I know, it's-
Now, did we have an issue in the gym for the dance?
Yep.
Was it the same?
It was a different issue, but the same thing, the sound system.
The
there
sound
is not
system
good.
was,
So those are both things that I'm glad you
That's perfect.
mentioned, and I didn't talk about the capital project in this point, but that, one of the things is, again, I'm very hopeful, but hope isn't the plan, but I'm hopeful and fairly confident that we'll be able to come in a little under budget, and then we'll be coming back to the committee and the board with, okay, what other things can we take care of that we need addressing? I know, Mr. Ahart has a short list of things, including basketball hoops for the 5th and 6th grade playground that shouldn't be too expensive and we'd like to add on. And then the sound system for the field would be the
We
next.
probably just outlived the lifespan of some of the components in that sound system.
That's exactly, the speakers are old.
And the gym, we should be able to, I asked Mike in his previous job, that's what he did. He did sound systems and phone systems. And so he is gonna take a look at it and I think he'll be able to put something together without, so there are 2 components in the rack that control all the speakers and control the inputs and the outputs. And those 2 components, one of them failed last year and we had it replaced, or we sent it back to be fixed. It was about $1,300 or $1,400 to get fixed. And then it happened again with the other one. And when that happened, I knew how much it was gonna cost. And so I said to Mike, can you, for $1,300, put something together for this? And so I think we'll be able to do that for winter events so that the gym will have decent sound.
Okay,
So we're hopeful. I'm hopeful that they'll have time to do that.
because I think that's important. People pay the taxes,
Absolutely.
because that's an outward show
Right, it's very
that
noticeable.
we're doing a good job. I did have a question. The homecoming photographs that Kathy took, are they gonna be posted on the website?
I'm sure.
There's a few of them already.
Yeah, so we'll get more of them up.
Okay, good. That was all I had, other than thanks for taking care of that with your team.
Right.
Listen, I don't, let's go back to visitors.
Right, well, I have a question just from listening to all the discussion. So Brittany had mentioned new field trip policy, so that in light of the accident,
Well, no, actually, I started the draft before that accident happened. The timing just, well, it's never fortunate. I mean, it's a terrible accident, but I do think that kind of makes a point of why I was thinking we should have a policy. I don't know, I interrupted.
Well, I was just wondering, so are there like safety implications in
Yeah.
the policy then?
So the policy would include things like who's gonna actually transport the student, or if we use an outside carrier that's not one of our drivers, how do we vet them? What type of permission and notice to parents do we give? We've always asked for permission, so we've always given notice, but it hasn't been in policy. Again, some of that should be, some of it should be procedural, but that also needs to be spelled out.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And yeah, I even included our PTSA because you're so active that someday you may want to sponsor a field trip. So, well, how does that work too? And how do you
Yeah,
account
I
for it?
wondered
And
about
then-
that, so that would be
Right.
great to.
Right, so all of that we want to have, again, not that anything's been done incorrectly in the past, I think it's always been done correctly. It's just, we're at a point where it should be formalized, so there's no question and it's clear to everyone.
That seems like a good idea.
And that would also cover PTSA sort of byline, would also cover like the Candor Culture Club that used to go abroad and that sort of affiliated group, right?
Right, so so the way I originally drafted it, and I think that something to that effect will stay in there, the policy will state that will be clear when it's a district trip or an outside agency providing a trip for Candor students. Even the Youth Soccer Association, if they wanted to take students to a professional soccer game, and they may advertise here on campus, or we may let them know, we have to be clear, if it's gonna be our field trip, then it's following our policy. If they're running the field trip, part of the permission should make that clear to parents, because it would otherwise be too easy to confuse. Because we're talking about the very same students, and the parents are probably hearing about it, when something came home from the school with the students. So we want to make sure we're clear whose trip it is, so parents can feel confident in signing that field trip permission slip.
We will head back in to do CPSC or no?
If you have questions, because you've approved it, was there anything that
Okay.
you felt needed explanation? No? So nothing more to explain if you don't have questions.
Sweet.
Did
8:10.
anybody print off? I just wanna make sure I get any copies. If anybody printed the report out.
8:10, we're adjourned. That's all.
The one in Spencer or Vanetta is.
Oh, gosh, ice cream's still open?
Oh, 9.